Hi everyone, this is Jim Tolles. I'm a spiritual teacher and I blog regularly at spiritualawakeningprocess.com. And if you enjoy this video I'm about to do, feel free to subscribe to my channel, stay in touch. For this particular video, I want to talk about running from your heart and hiding in your mind. So much Western culture does this. We are so locked up in here that we're trying to analytically think our way to everything. Uh, and it's not just the people who are being very analytical, but also people who just feel lost in their own emotions, that their emotions are just so vast and flowing and going in 15 different directions that they can't handle it, so they just check out. This is an issue to say the least, because there's so much wisdom in the heart. There's so much love in the heart, there's so much capacity for compassion and all these other different things that they will remain undeveloped when we don't address them. And additionally, all sorts of other nasty weeds grow up with fear and sadness and anger and shame. And these things start to clog up our lives. They start to limit the different relationships and situations we can be in because they're so easily triggered. So to start to think about these triggers is just think of them like those little hot buttons that we have. And imagine somebody's really sad. They just, had a bad breakup. And you're increasingly getting upset about this and you can't handle this. Why? It's because it's starting to trigger some undealt with sadness inside you. We spend a lot of time blaming the external world for how we're feeling, but all those feelings that we feel really are pretty much coming up from inside us. This is part of the truth of coming into the spiritual path, is starting to understand that we have all the emotions and the feelings and sensations going on inside us. And while there's some things that, come externally that can make us feel good for a little while, those are passing. So you can't get away from your heart, but people sure do try. And this level of ignorance and avoidance perpetuates the same. And you draw on other people who are doing the same. So you will find a whole bunch of people who are interesting mirrors. They'll mirror the similar ideas, and this can become these bad reinforced loops where like other people are like, yeah, this so and so person, they should just get over that breakup and they'll be fine, and what are they doing crying about it, right? So that you get the idea mirrored back. Conversely, though, when you're around people who are mirroring in this way, it gives you an opportunity to look at yourself and say, oh, this is something I do. And usually at first we're comfortable that we've attracted mirrors that show us things that we like, and the people that mirror us things that we don't like, we try to keep out of our lives. The people who mirror the things about ourselves we don't like tend to be our greatest teachers initially, because then we have a chance to say, oh, okay, so why is this upsetting to me? This person is just doing X, Y, and Z. And usually, for the most part, most of the things that people are doing aren't directly like threatening our lives. But the ego self is always acting like everything's threatening its life. So it's constantly setting up new barriers, right? And so there's more and more barriers being set up in front of the heart, so you don't feel these things. And then we can run to our mind with rationale, and we can run to the mind through work, and we can do all sorts of different things to try and hide up here long enough, and we start to shut the heart down so we can't feel. And this creates even more problems as far as finding relationships that make us feel really heart open and alive. And it can be a very, very startling thing for somebody to have their heart open a little bit and then to touch something deeply. And this can happen, in very happily married couples, and suddenly one of the persons starts to open their heart a little bit to somebody else in a new way, and they feel this love rush in. And of course, the confusion is to think it's the other person, and then it's not to say there might not be a great connection there, but rather it's just the person who's opening their heart is starting to come alive in a way that they hadn't before. And suddenly they start to see who their partner is that they're with and how they're reflecting a lot of close-heartedness, and then suddenly they're not as happy with their partner anymore. They've put themselves into a relationship that really is a karmic relationship, a learning relationship. When I use the word karma, I'm using it in a specific way. It's probably specific to me. I'm always coming up with new definitions. So never be afraid to ask me a question, and a message to me or something. Because it's important to be clear about what we're talking about. And just because we're using the same words doesn't mean we are. And so this karmic relationship is just showing you all these different things that you have to learn about yourself. And as you start to learn those things, usually those relationships end. It's not because they can't evolve, it's because most people aren't committed to relationships in this way to mutually grow together. People will say that they are, but when push comes to shove, they're not, because they're not really there to break down core beliefs that are define their whole way of living their lives. You know, usually what they're there is like they're just trying to get through some difficult moments, and I think that's growing together, and it does to some degree. You know, it's that sort of growth through shared pain, which is kind of how a lot of society works, a lot of relationships work. You know, it's the idea of hazing that fraternities do is that shared pain. You know, you went to something both traumatic, you know, and so therefore you're bonded together. War will do that for a lot of people. You know, that you're bonded to your platoon because you're in that same similar pain. The spiritual path is taking us beyond pain, though. And so as our hearts start to open, we start to realize we can feel other things. Usually as the heart opens, other emotions that we haven't dealt with come up next. And this often tends, you know, to encourage people once again to run back to their heads and these other defense mechanisms. So a big point of this particular video is starting to notice your defense mechanisms. When you run back up to your head, what does it mean to drop back into this inner loop of thinking? You know, how you go into judgment about other situations that don't seem safe, how you judge yourself, all these different things that, you know, hide you from the upset emotions that are still here. Because if you're feeling it, it's because it's yours. And you don't cut out emotions, you embrace them. And embracing them, you start to release them. So noticing how you use the mind is an important thing, because this is actually an inappropriate use of the mind. The mind is a very powerful tool. Let's not make any mistake about it. You're not throwing the mind away to get lost in a sea of emotions. Rather, it's being used too much. You know, it's kind of like the ketchup we've smeared on every piece of food item in our life. You know, relaxing the mind, opening the mind actually allows for more inspiration. So starting to notice, you know, how you hide, you know, why you hide, when you hide. These are things I also encourage people to go into your journal about. Start to say, okay, so this happened with this particular friend, and you know, I started to stop talking, right? You know, so this is a type of hiding. Or I started to get very loud and aggressive with my voice. So this is still the same type of hiding. It was hiding was trying to hide here by directing attention elsewhere, by pushing people away. Anger is kind of like a guard dog for emotions. You know, it's trying to keep people away from something. And we have to learn how to breathe with our anger and to release it and relax into it, start to find what it's hiding. Or, you know, sometimes anger is, you know, bottled up action that we need to do, and we're just mad at ourselves for stopping ourselves, which is usually being stopped by fear. So a whole host of things start to show up very, very quickly when we stop hiding in our minds, stop hiding, you know, on our intellectual work or wherever it is that we choose to try and get away. I mean, people do this in the spiritual path. They'll start to use all these different words and terms to hide from whatever they're afraid of. Like a lot of astrology gets used because it's the fear of the unknown. So you want to find out that your future is going to be okay, and they do vast star charts and whatnot. And, you know, and then there's other ways, you know, people can use different things. Well, you know, everything's working out the way it's supposed to. You know, it's kind of a way to hide behind the uncertainty, the fear of the unknown there, of like, well, you don't really know how it's going to work out for you. You know, well, God embraces all of us as we are, and there's deeper levels of intelligence and currents moving through life. That doesn't mean that we're going to have easy lives, pain-free lives. And I think this gets forgotten too in the spiritual path. There's this idea that everything is just going to be wonderful, simple, and easy all of a sudden by walking down this path. So I'm not saying that by dropping into your heart that things are going to get easy. Usually they don't. Usually you start to move through, but there are deeper levels of ease within you that can be touched, that become more present in your regular life. So that what you find is, while life can still be difficult externally, internally it's getting a lot easier. And this is the real joy of embracing the heart, and the ease of the heart, and the ease of emotion and love and compassion, some of the things I mentioned earlier, that start to become present for us and that we can share with ourselves and share with others. So I hope this video has been helpful. Please feel free to stay in touch with me through my blog, spiritualawakeningprocess.com, and have a beautiful day.